This program is brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Mosaic, a daily news program from Link TV, presents a selection of news reports from independent and state-controlled broadcasters from throughout the Middle East.
The Palestinian Security Agency has found 2 ready-to-be-launched missiles and some explosive materials near the city of Beit Jala in the south of the West Bank. More details with Khalid Al-Qasim.
The Palestinian Authority considered the finding of the missiles near Bethlehem in the West Bank as part of its attempt to enforce the rule of law and contain the security breakdown. However, the Hamas movement linked this finding to the upcoming fall conference.
First, this is a dangerous action. This will create a major dilemma for us, and we will not allow this under any situation. Hamas, now in Gaza, bans Palestinian organizations from launching missiles because it is facing sanctions and closures. We do not want to place the West Bank and our residents under siege, closures, and raids.
It appears that the Palestinian Authority, the Fayyad government, and the Israeli occupation are creating justifications to eliminate the Hamas movement permanently and to undermine the resistance, thus serving the interests of the occupation in the upcoming fall conference.
Recently, the Palestinian Authority has been carrying out an arrest campaign of Hamas members. It says that it has confiscated weapons and explosive materials in different areas of the West Bank, the latest of which was an explosive device weighing 10 kilograms in the Hebron area in the southern West Bank.
The authority is committed to agreements. It is working to stop the resistance, especially the armed resistance. That is the order now. As the authority is resuming its relations with Israel, it is attempting to enforce its control and authority.
These are not the first attempts to manufacture missiles and launch them from the West Bank areas. Israel has often announced that these attempts have been made before in Jenin and in Tulkarem. However, this time may be the first time that the Palestinian Authority has foiled these attempts, or it is the first time that the authority has declared that it foiled them. From the Palestinian presidential headquarters in Ramallah, Khalid Al-Qasim, Al-Arabiya.
The truth must be told. We are nearing an extensive operation in Gaza. Those were the words today from Defense Minister Ehud Barak. Barak told Army Radio that Israel will use all diplomatic means to weaken the Hamas leadership, but that the clock is ticking towards a major incursion. Barak said, quote, "There are many reasons why the operation was not carried out in the past few weeks. An operation in Gaza is not easy in terms of forces, the amount of time that the IDF would have to stay there, or in terms of the operational challenges the fighters will be met with." He added that in the meantime, all measures are being taken to minimize Qassam attacks. 2 Qassam rockets exploded in the town of Sderot this afternoon. There were no injuries or damage caused. A total of 7 missiles were fired at the beleaguered southern town today. There were no injuries in the earlier attacks as well. Meanwhile, Air Force jets attacked Qassam rocket launchers in the northern Gaza Strip, used for this morning's Qassam fire. Following the strike, additional mortar shells were fired, landing near the border fence. The attack did not cause any injuries or damage. In light of the ongoing Qassam attacks, the newly formed security panel, headed by Defense Minister Barak, decided today that each rocket launch will exact a very specific price from the Palestinians. Every time a rocket is fired from the Gaza Strip into Israel, the electricity supply into the area will be reduced. Gazans will now be penalized 7 megawatt hours of electricity per attack. a tactic that officials believe would be disrupting but mild enough to defend under international law. Approximately 62.5% of Gaza's electricity is provided directly by Israel. The Security Committee also made several other recommendations, including halting the supply of diesel fuel for Gaza power plants. Additionally, every mortar or Qassam attack on a Gaza crossing will lead to a closure of the border for 48 hours. The panel was established following the cabinet's decision last week to define the Gaza Strip as hostile territory. Were Palestinian terrorists planning to fire Qassam rockets on Jerusalem? Well, according to Ma'an, an independent Palestinian news agency, PA security forces today found 2 Qassam rockets in Bethlehem. The agency report says terrorists were intending to fire the rockets on Israel's capital, but say it's unclear to whom they belong. The Qassams were reportedly found between the Ada refugee camp and the Beit Jala City Hall in an area facing the Jerusalem neighborhood of Gilo. The words "God is great" were written on the rockets in Arabic. Israeli sources say Palestinian terrorists have made several attempts in recent years to smuggle rockets into the West Bank. Other efforts to develop Qassam rockets in the area have been prevented by Israeli security forces.
أهلا بكم. أجرى رئيس الوزراء إسماعيل هنية أمس اتصالا هاتفيا مع مدير المخابرات.
Palestinian Prime Minister Ismail Haniyeh phoned the director of Egyptian intelligence Omar Suleiman to discuss the Israeli decision to consider Gaza a hostile entity. Suleiman said that Egypt is also concerned with this issue and that it has contacted the Zionist side to talk to them about it. UN Secretary General Ban Ki-moon also demanded that Israel reconsider its position vis-a-vis Gaza, saying that this Israeli measure is in violation of international law. The Muslim Brotherhood in Jordan also condemned the Israeli measure against Gaza.
It is a new kind of deception by the Zionist enemy. After Israeli officials talked at length about the significance of the upcoming Middle East conference, which is scheduled to take place in the fall, they said that they consider Gaza a hostile entity. This is their way to justify collective punishment against the people of the Gaza Strip and the cutting of their electricity.
It has become clear that the decision made by the Israeli authorities to consider Gaza as a hostile entity is part of the war they are waging against our people. They have cut off the electricity and access to fuel, which negatively impacts the lives of the Palestinian people. We, as members of the Palestinian government, will notify different countries of this criminal act.
The decision of the Zionist occupiers is a dangerous measure against the Palestinians, and it is faced with Arab and Muslim silence.
The Zionist enemy has been able to place our people under siege and kill them because the Arabs and the Muslims are silent. They have not done anything to stop the siege against the Palestinian people or the attack against the democratically elected government. This means that they do not recognize the government that was elected by the Palestinian people. We hold the international community and the Arab world responsible for what had happened and will happen to the Palestinian people in Gaza and the West Bank.
Threats made by the Zionist occupiers have not affected the determination of the Palestinian people, who have never considered Gaza an ally of the occupation.
Israel is doing what Bush has done. Bush considers anyone who does not follow him an enemy. This is how the U.S. deals with the entire world, including the Arab and Muslim worlds.
I find the position taken by the Palestinian officials in Ramallah odd. It looks like they are coordinating with the Israelis against Gaza, but only God knows. It looks like they are talking with Israelis about how to place Gaza under siege.
We do not care about the agreement made between Abbas and the Jews to cut the water and electricity from Gaza. We could care less about this, and it will not affect our spirit. We will remain steadfast, God willing.
The Zionist occupiers are using another trick to influence international opinion. How do occupiers who consider Gaza a hostile entity and threaten to cut power and water from it view the West Bank? Is the West Bank now an ally? If so, how come its forces have recently invaded Ain al-Mai refugee camp in the city of Nablus? Muhammad al-Ashi, Al-Aqsa Satellite Channel, Gaza, Palestine.
The Israeli Haaretz newspaper said that Syria has agreed to transfer custodianship of the occupied Sheba Farms area to the United Nations. This comes as Damascus attempts to reach a solution to the conflict over sovereignty of the region.
The newspaper reports that the Spanish Foreign Minister, Miguel Ángel Moratinos, informed the Secretary General of the United Nations, Ban Ki-moon, about Syria's new position 2 weeks ago after he discussed the issue with the Syrian President Bashar al-Assad.
أن يزور موراتينوس دمشق فأمر ليس جديدا فالرجل كان مبعوثا خاصا للاتحاد الأوروبي.
Moratinos' visit to Damascus is not something new. He was the special envoy to the European Union before he became the Spanish foreign minister. However, what is new are the developments of this man's latest visit to Damascus, as reported by the Israeli Haaretz newspaper. After discussions with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad and senior Syrian officials, he left with a message to the UN Secretary General indicating that Damascus is prepared to transfer the occupied Sheba Farms to UN custodianship. According to the newspaper, the Syrian proposal aims to put Israel in an awkward position and intensify pressure on it to withdraw from the region before the final borders are drawn. The leak of this news, if true, comes amidst talk that Israel is dissatisfied with the Spanish government for not officially informing Tel Aviv about the new Syrian proposal. However, learning about the news late did not prevent Israel from repeating its same position. It will not withdraw from Sheba before the final borders are drawn. Otherwise, this would reward Hezbollah. The new Syrian position, if this is the correct description of it, is being met by a call that was made last year by Lebanese President Fouad al-Sinyoura, who said that the UN custodianship of the Sheba Farms is a precondition for Israeli withdrawal. Israel maintained control over the Sheba Farms area after its forces had withdrawn from southern Lebanon in 2000. This compelled Hezbollah to repeatedly say that its liberation has not been completed and that the battle with Israel has not yet ended. The complexity of the Sheba Farms issue lies in its ambiguity. Although the United Nations inclines to consider the Sheba Farms area as more Syrian territory rather than Lebanese, it has not yet defined its final legal status. Meanwhile, the debate is ongoing about whether negotiations about Sheba must be between Syria and Lebanon after it is liberated, or between Israel and Syria on how to liberate it. Nonetheless, in both cases, Sheba is currently under Israeli occupation.
وسوريا من أجل تحريرها ما زال قائما رغم أنها في الحالين ما زالت تحت الاحتلال الإسرائيلي.
What does the opposition camp in Central Beirut look like at the start of the presidential election session? This investigation is by colleague Christine Habib.
The road leading to the parliament from the opposition tents may be paved, but it has many obstacles. Lebanese army checkpoints surround the camp, and the people who entered underwent searches and their papers were scrutinized. While members of parliament were busy with their session, riot police were deployed throughout the camp. They carried out intense patrols on motorcycles and communicated with one another using walkie-talkies. Everything appeared calm.
The opposition is using peaceful and modern methods. We're not holding guns, knives, or anything else. We have left our homes and children to sit in these tents. We have a moderate position. We are Lebanese and we love all the Lebanese people. We are able to foster understanding between brothers.
While the representatives meet underneath the dome of the parliament and the members of the opposition meet under the strikers' tents, citizens and business owners have neither dome nor tent to shelter them from the harm of politics.
If things get more difficult, then what's left? There will be no hope. The best thing to do is to stop everything. More than this is too much. That's the most one can take.
There are also messages that blame politicians.
They should have come to an agreement a long time ago and should have not let the situation in the country get so bad. People are tired. And look at us. Our office is here, but we are sitting on the streets.
Activists leave their camp carrying their belongings after having spent the night under guard. Young men read the newspaper, tanks, rifles, and camouflaged fatigues. This is what the opposition camps looked like on the day of the short parliamentary session. The night before the presidential election session, some people were concerned about this camp, which was surrounded by the military and elite units from the Lebanese army, including commando units. There are only a few meters separating the Nejma Plaza and the Strikers Plaza. There are mixed opinions among those striking in the parliamentary chambers and those striking in the tents. No matter how different these opinions may be, the desire is the same: a free nation, free from all forms of custodianship, a nation that may see the light with the election of a new president 1 month from today.
The pictures of former Syrian Vice President Rifat al-Assad have recently been hung on the streets of Latakia and Tartus. Written slogans call for him to return to his nation.
شهدت مدن وبلدات محافظتي اللاذقية وطرطوس في سوريا.
The cities and villages within the Tartus and Latakia provinces witnessed the plastering of photos of the former Syrian Vice President Rifat al-Assad, as well as written slogans calling for him to return to his nation. Along with video footage, the pictures of Rifat al-Assad, which were leaked as part of a recent campaign, were hung near huge pictures of the late Syrian President Hafiz al-Assad. This shows Syrian police and military officers gathering at various crossings and roads where the pictures were put up and later torn down and defaced. Ribal al-Assad, the son of Rifat al-Assad, confirmed in a statement that this campaign will not end and will continue to escalate until democracy and freedom returns to Syria. He noted that as a result of this campaign, more than 45 people were arrested and remain under interrogation and continue to be tortured. Al-Assad called on releasing them immediately, returning the power to all institutions in Syria, and repairing the relationship between Syria and Lebanon in the interest of the people.
وتصحيح العلاقات السورية اللبنانية لما فيه مصلحة الشعبين.
With the same calm tone of voice he used since arriving in New York City, Iran's President Mahmoud Ahmedinajad addressed the UN General Assembly, where he stood firm and defiant. Ahmedinajad told world leaders that his country's nuclear file is officially closed and is now under the monitoring of the International Atomic Energy Agency. He also defied UN security resolutions and said that his country will continue its civilian uranium enrichment program.
During the past 2 years, by abusing the Security Council, the arrogant powers have repeatedly accused Iran and even made military threats and imposed illegal sanctions against it. Previously, they insisted on the Iranian nation's nuclear case, but today, because of the resistance of the Islamic Republic, the issue is back to the agency, and I officially declare that in our opinion, the nuclear issue of Iran is now closed and has turned into an ordinary agency matter.
Was it a diplomatic move by Ahmadinejad to stay and listen to the speeches of his opponents, who gathered their notes and walked out when he was ushered to the podium? Among those opponents was George Bush, who briefly mentioned the Iranian nuclear issue. Despite the presence of world rivals such as Bush and Ahmadinejad at the same time in the same place, the first day of the UN General Assembly meetings was described as calm, except for some strongly worded comments issued by the French president. Fathi Ismail reports.
From every corner of the world, international leaders, friends and foes gathered in the UN chamber to discuss stalled and urgent issues, including security, the climate, and the economy. The leaders talked for hours, with the Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad taking the center stage. Meanwhile, George Bush, Ahmadinejad's #1 enemy, was the first speaker to address the UN General Assembly.
The UN body has been silent on repression from regimes from Havana to Caracas and Pyongyang to Tehran, while focusing its criticism exclusively on Israel.
Bush's speech was unexpectedly mellow as he stood calm at the UN podium, which has witnessed fiery speeches by Bush during the past year. It seems that Bush has changed tactics in his speech, which indicates that his enemies might have gotten used to hearing his threatening remarks even before coming to New York. However, this calm at the UN headquarters compound was disturbed by remarks made by France's President Sarkozy, who strongly criticized the Iranian nuclear program.
The weakness and abandonment don't lead to peace, but rather to war. The French position is clear: no nuclear weapons for Iran. The sanctions to convince Iran include negotiations and firmness.
Meanwhile, Ahmedinajad, who listened carefully to what his foes had to say, seems to have adopted a rather balanced approach in his speech. It was a similar approach to the one he adopted during his appearance at Columbia University, where he spoke calmly before hundreds of students and answered their questions without expressing anger. He kept his cool despite the fact that many of the students held anti-Ahmadinejad banners, giving him a feeling that he was an unwanted guest.
Thursday, September 27th, marks the birth anniversary of Imam Hassan Mujtaba, the second Imam of Prophet Muhammad's infallible household. The staff at JNN English News would like to extend congratulations to all Muslims on this joyous occasion. President Ahmedinajad's speech at the UN General Assembly, which received live coverage by major international news networks, has also drawn wide reaction from world media. The Qatar-based Al Jazeera TV network said Ahmedinejad's speech brought together a great number of world leaders at the United Nations. The French Liberation Daily said the best received address at the UN General Assembly was that of the Iranian president. CNN said Ahmadinejad snatched the opportunity to direct criticism towards U.S. policies. Hardline Fox News TV channel, which was furious at Ahmadinejad's presence in the UN General Assembly session, insulted the president several times, but admitted that Ahmadinejad's speech has been warmly welcomed because many of the world leaders at the assembly share viewpoints with Ahmadinejad. And in a rare measure, the Washington Post AD has published the full text of the Iranian president's address to the world body. Iran will carry out a multi-billion-dollar gas project without Total if the French oil company bows to political pressure to stay away from the project. Caretaker of Iran's oil minister Ghulam Hossein Nozari said if Total does not join the project with the country, the powerful hands of Iranians will carry out South Pars project. This comes as French President Nicolas Sarkozy called earlier this week for tougher international sanctions against Iran's nuclear program and warned Total and gas firm Gaz de France to refrain from investing in Iran. Total is in negotiations with Iran for building the country's first liquefied natural gas export terminal. The deal was signed in February 2004 and had been due to start up to 2009, but talks on the price are still ongoing.
Well, the US-led coalition in Afghanistan says they've killed almost 170 Taliban fighters in the country's south over the last 2 days. The Taliban, though, deny that they've suffered any losses. And Afghan government says civilians have also been killed in the latest battles. Alan Fisher has the latest from Kabul.
There is an ongoing battle in the southern province of Helmand. It's been going on since Tuesday. What we know is that a coalition-led convoy was in the area supported by Afghan National Army. It was targeted by the Taliban. Firefights have been continuing for hours. Now, Musa Qala is a Taliban stronghold. It was taken over by them in February. It's remained in their control since. There's been a great deal of fighting around that area. It's close to the hometown of Mullah Omar, the leader of the Taliban. Now, The US-led coalition say they've inflicted 104 casualties on the Taliban. They've killed 104 Taliban fighters. The Taliban say they have suffered no losses at all. In fact, a Taliban spokesman said to Al Jazeera, everyone knows we're in control of that area. How possibly could the coalition stand there and count the number of dead bodies? Now, also in the southern provinces of Uruzgan, there was a battle on Tuesday, and the US-led coalition say that they killed 65 Taliban fighters. The Taliban deny that. They say that they targeted a convoy, there was a fierce firefight, and that they have suffered a number of losses. They say it's a low number, but they won't put an exact figure on that. They say that a number of casualties have been inflicted, but on the civilian population. Now, the Afghan Interior Ministry say that 4 people have been killed there, no more as far as they're aware, although people on the ground are telling us that 2 houses were targeted in bombing by coalition aircraft, and they have seen a number of women and children among the dead. But in Helmand, this fighting is continuing at the moment. Just to recap, the US-led coalition say in Helmand they have killed 104 Taliban fighters, in Uruzgan 65 Taliban fighters, and in Helmand for the moment the fighting continues.
Hi, I'm Jamal Dajani, producer of Mosaic. I'm coming to you today to ask for your help in keeping Mosaic alive. Even as a news producer, I sometimes forget how precious freedom of speech can be. When the US invaded Iraq and cruise missiles were flying over Baghdad, I was astounded by the coverage. Field reporters for Al Jazeera and Abu Dhabi gave us a close look at the first days of the war. But American anchors hung back, relegated to rooftop reporting from their hotels in Kuwait City. Even when they entered Baghdad later, US anchors continued their embedded journalism. What happens in the war is different depending on the lens you're looking through. This is what Mosaic is all about. Different lenses, different perspectives rarely seen on American TV. Right now, we need to raise $200,000 to keep Mosaic on the air. So I'm asking you, go online and make a donation at linktv.org or call 1-866-485-8848 right now to make your pledge. Please pledge as much as you can. We need to reach our goal to continue this work. Mosaic cannot be made anywhere else. You can make your pledge online or call 1-866-485-8848 and give as much as you can. The good news is that many of you have answered our appeal and generously contributed. Thank you very much. Those names on the screen represent just a small part of this growing movement. This movement for independent media. Some say independent media is dying, but when I see how many people give to Mosaic and stay passionate about what we do, I know that there is hope. A lot of you write and tell us you wish you could give more. I want to tell you that every dollar is appreciated, and the fact that we have such dedicated viewers like you is what keeps us going every day to produce another Mosaic intelligence report. Again, we're trying to raise $200,000 to stay alive through the end of the year. We're getting closer every day, but we still need your support. If you have ever turned to Mosaic for information, we are now asking you to become part of our success. You can make your pledge online at linktv.org or call 1-866-485-8848 right now to make your pledge. Please give generously as much as you can afford. Give $50, $100, or $200, or even $500. Yes, make that call that makes a difference. You will not find a show like Mosaic on CNN or Fox. Make sure you can always find it here on Link TV. Pledge online at linktv.org or call 1-866-485-8848 right now. That number is a direct lifeline for Mosaic and its survival. Keep this uncensored reporting on the air. Thank you for your support.
Mosaic needs your support. Help us reach our goal to raise $200,000 by the end of the year to keep Mosaic on the air. Pledge your gift today at 1-866-485-8848 or linktv.org. Get more news about the Middle East online at linktv.org/mosaic. The Mosaic webpage offers a complete archive of Mosaic programs, program transcripts, the Mosaic video podcast, and the Mosaic Intelligence Report, a weekly analysis of the hottest stories from the Middle East. The views expressed on Mosaic are those of the participating broadcasters, not Link TV or its sponsors. The production of Mosaic is made possible with the support of viewers like you. Thank you. This program was brought to you by Link TV for educational and non-commercial use only. Link TV is the only U.S. television network devoted to global and national news, with uncompromising documentaries and diverse cultural programs which connect you to the world.